Yesterday, I was a little evasive about something that was supposed to happen in the third hour, and it was something that I wanted to happen, but I didn't know if it was going to happen, and as it was, it didn't happen, but the individual who was going to be making the third hour happen yesterday finally showed up in Fresno to take care of his evening commitments, and it's going to happen now. What the hell am I talking about? The mayor of America is in our area today, Rudy Giuliani. And I had the pleasure of two individual get-togethers with this guy. I'm sure he doesn't remember when it was candidate Donald Trump. And he and my dear friend, now his dear friend, Devin Nunes, were getting together with the wannabe president at the time to give him the lessons on the water wars here in California. And that was my first personal experience with Rudy Giuliani. But why is he here now? I don't know. So I'm going to shut my music up and stop talking. And we'll talk to the mayor of America right now, Rudy Giuliani, who's joining us on KMJ. And sir, what a pleasure. How are you, my friend?
Well, I'm glad I'm on, and I had a very good time yesterday in your area. You know, I happen to really love that part of California. I've been there a lot for political and personal reasons, and it was just a joy to return. But I'll tell you directly why I was there. We are myself and a group of very loyal Republicans, loyal to the president, and concerned about, I believe, the corruption that has happened within our government. Want to change that, and we think there are some things that we have to change. For example, the information that our American people receive, 75% to 80% of it, if not more, comes from a very biased source. It gives them tremendous amounts of misinformation. I think Devin's case is a wonderful illustration, or a terrible illustration of that.
Totally.
What I'm talking about is the case in which CNN announced, as if it was gospel, that he met with the chief witness against Joe Biden, Victor Shokin, in Vienna on a specific date in November of 2018. The moment I heard that, I knew it was untrue. I knew it was untrue because I'm the one who discovered Shokin as a witness. I know pretty much everything he's done in the last year and a half, and he's never met with Devin. And I said to myself, oh, they'll surely correct this very quickly. I even wrote a text in and a tweet, and they stuck with it. And now they've been proven to be lying. I mean, proven every way you can prove it. Devin was somewhere else. He had a picture of himself there. His passport doesn't indicate he was there. Mr. Shokin, who I went and personally interviewed under oath in Kiev, hadn't been to Austria for 7 years. His passport demonstrates that. Plus, his travel is restricted by the Ukrainian government because they're afraid he's going to come here and blow open the Democrat conspiracy. And therefore, he can't get out of the country. I wasn't able to get him to come here to give testimony. They wouldn't let him out of the country. And our embassy is the one who facilitates that because they still believe they're working for Barack Obama.
You know, you're out here trying to get rid of some of this misinformation that's been going on, but you're in California. Don't you feel like you're kind of swimming up, against the stream in the state of California, trying to change a few minds on any of this stuff?
No, first of all, we're raising money, Ray. We have a project. This is not just going to be now; it's going to continue after the election. But we do have an emergency project. The emergency project is we're doing a documentary. And we're taking all of the footage that I have and John Solomon has and several others. And we're going to put it into a documentary that can be a featured documentary that will be released hopefully in April or May. Okay. To have all of this information delivered to the American people in 1.5 hours. And let them make a decision, because it goes way beyond. I started a podcast 2 weeks ago in which I lay out the case against Biden, and I do it as if it's a trial. I tried 100 cases. Right, my real talent is a trial lawyer, not all the other things I fake. And I put it together. Like I put together the investigation of the 5 families of the mafia, or the investigation of corrupt politicians, or Michael Milken, or the many other cases that I was involved in. And then I lay it out. But I don't just talk. I present testimony. I show documents. Right now, I revealed the document that I found after it was hidden for 2 years, that the Ukrainian government auditing agency found $5.3 billion that was missing in foreign aid. $5.3 billion, of which $3 billion is American money. They were going to investigate the Ukrainians, and they were stopped by the Obama administration. And it was buried for 2 years. Can you imagine burying a report saying that $5.3 billion in foreign aid was missing? It was given to me in December. It was given to me in December of last year by a very high-ranking official of the Ukrainian government. And he says, you're the first American who was willing to receive this. Every other American we presented to handed back to us and said, we're not interested. We don't want you to go into it. So I revealed that today on my podcast with Mr. Durkash and Mr. Teleshenko, who described it. And it has already resulted in one case in which 2 people running an AIDS charity, sponsored by none other than George Soros.
Of course.
And these people are close associates with George Soros. They've been arrested. They've been charged with numerous crimes. And the amount in question, $132 million.
Wow.
These people in Ukraine don't do small crimes. When it's embezzlement, it's $134 million. When it's a bribe, it's $100 million. When they launder money out of the country, it's $7.5 billion. I mean, these are major criminals. But I think what you're going to find from my podcast and then our documentary is that it's not just Ukrainian corruption. It's Ukrainian-American corruption. We instigate some of it. We take money from it. And at least in the last 10 years, it's pretty much been an exclusive stomping ground for corrupt Democrats. There's one quote by Mr. Teleshenko in which he says the whole thing. He says, if this thing is ever completely revealed, the former president of Ukraine will go to jail. A lot of people in Kiev will, and a lot more top Democrats than anyone realizes.
If I may, let me ask you about the current president of Ukraine. I've been to Ukraine many times. Love the people. Mostly Kiev and Odessa is where I tend to hang out. And the last time I was there...
we share that. We share that great love for them. They're very, very exceptional people, and they're being so horribly misused.
Absolutely.
That makes me even more passionate about it.
At the time that I went, it was prior to the presidency of Mr. Zelensky, and there were a lot of people talking about him in a very, very positive way, also talking about how corrupt the guy at the time was who was the leader there. Give me a quick 30-second blurb on Zelensky. Is this a good guy or not?
Well, I would say he is a good guy. There's no question about that. He's an inexperienced guy. He's an actor-comedian. He has the right intentions. Does he have the requisite common sense and incredible courage that it will take to break up the stranglehold of the oligarchs? That's a work in progress.
Yeah.
That's the reason why the president pushed him so hard on corruption. The president could care less about Biden as an opponent. This whole idea that the president was digging up dirt on Biden is so totally ridiculous. I started this investigation now 2 years ago, before Biden was a candidate, to obtain the information about the Ukrainian collusion that actually happened. I can prove it. To offend the president against the false charges of Russian collusion.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden was handed to me. I didn't go looking for him. In the middle of my first interview of the major witness, he said to me, and of course then there was Biden's bribe of the president and all the money Zlochevsky bribed Biden with. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, oh, your senator has been making money there for 5 years. They've been shaking down this Zlochevsky guy. His son has a no-show job, and they bribed the senator with the payment to the son for the no-show job. I said, you got to be kidding me. And then he pulls out a video from his cell phone, and he shows it to me, and he shows me Biden speaking at the Council on Foreign Relations, saying directly, I pressured the president of the Ukraine to fire the prosecutor because he wouldn't get his $1 billion in loan guarantees if he did. Now, having been a United States attorney, assistant United States attorney, 17 years in the Justice Department, I know the definition of bribery in my sleep.
Yeah.
Offering something of value, the loan guarantee, in exchange for official action, firing the prosecutor. I said, oh, my God, they admitted bribery. But he did something even worse. He gave us evidence of criminal intent. He left out the fact that his son was under investigation by that prosecutor, which, of course, they deny, and I can prove.
Rudy,
I can prove.
Go ahead.
I can prove 5 different ways that the kid was under investigation, including a document that, if you want to go to my website, it's there, Rudy Giuliani, CS.com. You go there, and you are going to see a document from the government of Latvia, translated into English, to the government of Ukraine, which describes Hunter Biden as a major defendant in a $14.3 billion money laundering case.
Wow.
That document, the date of it, is within 2 days of the date that Shokin was fired.
Yeah.
So to say he wasn't under investigation is one of 10 major Biden lies.
Rudy, if I may ask you, I got to ask you about this claim in the book from George Pataki, the former governor of New York. And if this is true, I totally get it, but he's saying that you asked him, secretly, of course, to cancel the 2001 mayoral election so you could stay in there a little longer after 9/11 to help rebuild the city. In a way, that makes a hell of a lot of sense to me, but how valid is that claim, sir?
Well, I did not ask George to change the law to keep me in. Mm-hmm. For 2 days, the question was raised by other people, people proposing it, that I remain for 4 more months in order to make sure that the recovery, kept going, because they believed I was doing a very good job. I thought about it. I was against it to start with. I thought about it only from the point of view of my responsibilities to my city. And after 2 days of listening to advice from my aides and friends, I decided actually it was becoming too much of a distraction to our recovery effort, and I cut it off. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. During that period of time, I never asked anyone to do it because I never decided to do it. Mm-hmm. I would say if I have to go back now and go through my mind, was I leaning in favor of it? Was I leaning against it? More often I was leaning against it than in favor of it. Although some people made very impassioned arguments that we shouldn't break up the situation until at least it had gotten to the point where it was totally safe. Right. But I decided that we had actually made tremendous progress, that by the end of December we could get it to the state where it's no longer dangerous. I don't know if people realize it, but that was an exceedingly dangerous site even after it happened.
Oh, I'm sure.
And one of the things I'm proudest of is that during those tough months, we didn't lose any lives in the recovery effort. My experts told me we had to expect that we were going to lose 10 or 12 lives in the recovery effort. Now, here's why, Ray. below the ground, there were fires of 200 degrees Fahrenheit, fires that melt steel that we couldn't put out immediately because they were 3-4 stories below the ground, hidden. So let's say you're searching for your son's body. You could easily unleash one of those fires a month later, and all of a sudden we would have a pretty big fire that could kill people in the area or an explosion. That situation existed as an acute problem for about 6 or 7 weeks. There was also the problem that the Surrey walls that keep the Hudson River out some of them had been destroyed. And this is absolutely true. Had we had a terrible rainstorm or a hurricane in that period of time, we would have flooded all of Lower Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
Because the Surrey walls that protect it were very vulnerable. So we had to work 24 hours a day getting those rebuilt. And if people want to see it, if they go to the museum, there's actually a great exhibit that points that out, that shows. So I guess the long and short of it is I wanted to leave at a point where I could leave it at least safe.
Sure.
There still was going to be 6 months more of work and the horrible, excruciating thing of looking for bodies, looking honestly for belt buckles, and but I never asked anyone to please extend it because I hadn't decided it. I feel very sorry that George is saying this. I believe that George wants to sell his book, and I am always leery of the things that are leaked before a book comes out, because I wrote a book that sold 2 million copies.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asked by my publisher to leak things and also to exaggerate things in order to sell the book. I always thought George was the kind of man who had the moral fortitude to resist that, and I am exceedingly disappointed. He knows I didn't ask him that. He knows I discussed it with him, but he knows I didn't ask him that. I also think if the shoes were reversed, I would not be putting this in my book, because I would think that the relationship between the governor and the mayor should be one kept to ourselves. But look, everybody's different. But the simple fact is, George is doing that to sell his book. And I'm just very disappointed in him because I considered him a good friend.
I've got about a minute or so left here. The fact that former Mayor Bloomberg, is starting every commercial that runs ad nauseum over and over again, that, he's the man who rebuilt New York. He's responsible for bringing New York back to life, blah, blah, blah. How would you respond to that claim from Mike Bloomberg? And about the man, Mike Bloomberg, you could probably better speak to him than anybody else at this point in time.
George. Same thing with George. I think George has always been jealous that I got too much credit, and now maybe he's getting even. Mike, all Mike has to do is tell the truth. I handled the acute situation. I was there on September 11, not him. I was the guy in the fire. I was the guy who was trapped in a building and almost killed, not Mike. Mike did take over the city when a massive rebuilding effort was required. It wasn't acute, it wasn't emergency, but it was massive, and he did a good job. And he could do a very good commercial saying, I took over the city at a very perilous time, and I did a good job handling it, and everyone thinks I did. Why they have to do this lying is why Americans are so angry at politicians. Just a little bit of discipline, or how about just a little bit of integrity? You don't have to write something in your book that your publisher is telling you to write because you're going to make an extra $10, or your stupid political consultant is saying that you handled 9/11 when there's 50 million copies of tapes that show that you weren't even there and somebody else handled it. I feel very bad for these people because they are friends, and this shows very weak character.
Mr. Mayor, it's been a joy. Thank you so much for getting back to us today. And I wish you luck. Enjoy your time here in California.
I wish you luck. You do a very, very good job here. And, Devin thinks the world of you.
Vice versa. We've become sort of attached at the hip. I had your name
Well,
came...
I have. So I've developed so much respect for that man. Whatever he wants to run for, ever, I'm right there.
Your name came up Saturday night. I had dinner at his home, and I was with the author, Lee Smith, who wrote the book about him and the plot against the president, and also our mutual buddy, Victor Davis Hanson. And I forget who brought up your name and for what reason, but Lee stood up and goes, "Now there's a book. We got to talk to this guy." Devin just laughed and says, "Yeah, there's probably 2 or 3 books there if you talk to Rudy."
By the way, I've read the book. It's a damn good book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's not filled with, I don't know. I don't want to say the word. I'm a New Yorker. I say bad words.
Yeah, BS.
It's not filled with lies.
Right. No, it's very well documented, and he documents all the way through the book, so it's straight ahead stuff. Yeah.
And Devin's a hero. Devin's a true hero, an American hero.
He doesn't deserve a lot that he's getting. You know that, and I know that.
No, but he takes it and he fights back and he doesn't cower. I mean, there's so few of Devins. Thank God we got him.
Yeah. And thank God we have you, sir. Wish you well, and we'll talk to you down the road.
I look forward to it. We had a great conversation. I can't wait till we have the next one.
Okay, Rudy. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Rudy Giuliani on KMJ.